For today's episode, we're going to talk about how if you don't decide on something, then something will be decided for you. And this is a topic I wrote about on my Substack recently. So if you're interested in reading about that in a more creative nonfiction form, go and subscribe over there. But this is an important topic because I feel like there are many of us who avoid making decisions almost as a way of feeling more in control. And this is something that I struggle with as a recovering control freak, in a sense. There's this odd feeling like it's too overwhelming to decide, right? It's too overwhelming to choose something because what if I make the wrong choice? What if I change my mind? What if it doesn't work out the way I wanted to? So I'm just not going to choose at all. I'm not going to make a decision. I'm going to revoke making a decision almost out of spite for life, for the universe. I'm not going to make a decision at all. What happens though is inevitably something will be decided for you. No decision is a decision. A lack of certainty is certainty in and of itself. Inaction is a form of taking action. Something will happen either way. So when you don't take the control that you actually have, which is you're going to be faced with situations, whether good or bad, and you're going to always have a decision or a choice to make. Sometimes in really big ways with really big decisions, sometimes in really small ways, like even the smallest decision of, something as simple as like, what kind of shoes do I wear today? Right? That's going to impact your day in one way or another. Maybe you wear the wrong shoes for what you're doing, your feet hurt, whatever. And then there are really big decisions in life that will also impact your life and the way you experience it. But ultimately you have to decide. And if you don't decide, the decision will be made for you one way or another. So let's say, as an example, the shoe example, because it's almost innocuous and silly. But even in that scenario, this applies, right? So say you are having a hard time deciding between what shoes to wear. And you're like, I'm not going to wear shoes. I'm going to avoid the decision of wearing any shoes. Well, what happens is then the rest of your day has now been decided. And that probably means you're going to stay home and you're not going to do anything because you're not putting shoes on to do something. Or you go out without shoes, and that's going to inevitably affect your experience throughout the day. Obviously, that's a very silly example, but it applies regardless. It's also important with the really big decisions in our lives. And I get it. I am a perfectionist. I am a people pleaser. There are many things in my life that I avoid or have avoided. I'm getting better, I'm sure, as we all are in this community, but there are many things that I've avoided taking control of, deciding on, because I'm like, you know what? I'm either going to let it happen as it just happens. I'm going to revoke any sort of agency I might have here in the hopes that it sorts itself out, right? Just hoping that if it sorts it out and you don't have to do anything, you don't have to take any control because then you don't have any responsibility after. Or maybe you were conditioned in your childhood and your upbringing to have people that made those decisions for you, whether you liked it or not, right? Maybe you had caretakers who took control all the time, never let you really do anything. And so now you're in this space where you feel like, I don't deserve to have the agency to decide, so I'm just not going to decide. There's a variety of reasons why we feel like we can't or shouldn't decide on something or don't want to decide on something. But ultimately, whether you want to, can, can't, whatever, a decision will be made, right? And obviously there are many things in life that we can't control. I say this all the time in my content. Yeah, of course, things happen to us that are shitty, unpredictable, unplanned, painful, and we cannot change them. The only thing you can really do is in any given moment, decide on how you're going to handle it. That's it. You can decide in that moment, I'm going to cry, I'm going to get angry, I'm going to not react, I'm going to do this instead. And neither of these are right, wrong, good or bad, or going to fix things necessarily. Like, it's just a decision. And those decisions, you can't always predict what's going to happen when you make a decision, right? All you can really do is check in with yourself and have the ability to really understand yourself and your needs and make a decision from there. But if, like me, you struggle throughout your life to make decisions, to decide on something, to have any sort of awareness of yourself, then obviously it's going to be so much harder to understand what would be the best decision for you right now. It might not be the right decision, which obviously would trigger your people-pleasing tendencies, right? Always looking for what's right. What can I do that's right? But it's a decision regardless that's going to hopefully in some way help you in your life as it is right now and help you navigate it. That's the only point of decision making. I think, again, for those of us who are people pleasers and perfectionists, we've been conditioned to believe that decision making means you have to do it right and it has to be the right thing. And if you don't get it right, and if it's not right, then you don't decide at all. Don't even bother deciding. That's not beneficial for you in the long run, right? It's going to hold you back. It's going to prevent you from living your life. And your life's already happening. You're currently living it, whether you decide to live it or not, whether you take action towards things you want or make decisions on the kind of life you want to live. Life is being lived regardless. So the only beneficial thing you can do for yourself, the kindest thing you can do for yourself, is take control of any decision you can in any given moment, because you will always have a decision to make. There will always be something you have to decide on. I truly believe that every moment of your day is kind of like a fork in the road, right? You have directions that you can go in, and you get to decide, and you get to cultivate your own narrative, your own story. Of course, there are things that happen. There are, twists and turns on this journey that you can't control. All you can do is follow through with what's happening and allow yourself to navigate them based on the circumstances. The circumstances won't always be good. They're not going to be always enjoyable, fun, safe a lot of the time. But again, if you don't decide, something will be decided for you. And if that thing decided for you is not really aligned with you and aligned with what you want to experience in this life, it's not going to feel good. And you're almost going to get more resentful towards yourself when you realize that you could have taken control. And I don't want to lean on the idea of coulda, woulda, shoulda. I don't think those are beneficial either. But I do think many of us struggle with that level of regret of looking back at the things in our lives that we had an opportunity to decide on. We had a choice, but we did not take it because of fear or insecurity or perfectionism, whatever. And again, this is not to shame you for it. This is not to make you hate yourself for it. That's not the point of this. And you can't go back and change things, right? You can't go back and undo what you've done or do what you didn't do. A level of self-forgiveness is required here in order to then move forward and take the action and control in future decisions when you can. And I think the kindest thing for you is to take the control of deciding rather than allowing things to be decided for you when possible. Sometimes things will be decided for you without your control, without any sort of say from you, obviously. That's life. But there are many cases where you have the decision right there in front of you, and the kindest thing you can do for yourself is just decide. And risk the fear of failure, right? Risk it not being perfect. Risk changing your mind, because there's nothing really wrong with changing your mind, right? There's nothing wrong with it not being perfect. We're just conditioned to believe that there's something wrong with that. So then we kind of force ourselves to try and make the best decision all the time, which can be debilitating. It can be paralyzing. And then what happens? You don't make a decision at all because you're paralyzed in fear. And then a decision is made for you inevitably over time. And that sucks. It sucks to look back on that and realize that a lot of that was you. Not all of it, but some of it. And that's the hardest thing to live with, I think. There was a point in my journey through personal growth and my 20s where I realized that I have to start deciding on me. You have to start deciding on yourself to create a life that is enjoyable for you, regardless of your circumstances. I think for those of us who are people pleasers, once the disillusionment kicks in and you realize that the fantasy of a perfect life, when it dissolves, you are left with the realization and reality that there is no perfect choice. There is no right way. You just have to choose. You just have to do something. Because you're going to be pushed forward. Time is going to pass no matter what. And so all you're left with is your ability to decide on it when possible. That's it. And again, to not take control of that is not nice to you. And it's not going to feel good in the long run. And you're going to end up with results that you didn't even want. And maybe you knew you wouldn't have wanted those results, and yet you still didn't take the action towards something different because of, again, the fears, the insecurities, the conditioned beliefs, all those things, which don't shame yourself for it. It's very difficult to break out of that. It's not easy. It's very painful. But I hope this brings a bit of awareness of them for you. I hope it allows you to kind of click something into place when it comes to your own struggles with decision making. You have to decide. Something's going to be decided regardless. Either way, some decision is going to be made. So it's either going to be in your hands or in the hands of someone or something else. Aside from all the things you can't control, there will be things you can control. You should take control of them if possible. And this is something I have to remind myself of a lot. I even get stuck on this. So I'm not saying that I'm any better or perfect in this regard either. It's a constant struggle to realize that, oh, this is a moment where I do have the control. I actually recognize that I do have some power here. So now what? Do I step into the fear of being imperfect, of failing, of changing my mind? Or do I let go of this control and let it be decided for me? Again, you can choose whatever you want. There is, again, no morality here. There's no right or wrong intrinsically. It's just what's right or wrong for you. What will feel best for you, for your inner child? What would be the kindest thing for you? Because the more you lean in towards what is kind for you, you start to trust yourself more. And then you realize, okay, I can make decisions out of agency and trust myself to deal with the consequences of them, whatever they might be. They might be good, they might be bad. I trust myself to be able to pivot when I need to. If I make a decision that not quite right, but let me change direction. That self-trust is required here. And the more you take that control when you have it, the more self-trust you build. And that helps you continue making decisions, continue navigating your life and directing it in the way that feels best for you. So I hope this was helpful. I hope it was informative. I hope it gave you a different perspective. If you want to talk about topics like this with me one-to-one, you can book a call over on my website. As I always say, I am not a therapist. These are just the things I've learned and experienced throughout my life. If you want to read about these topics, you can go subscribe to my Substack and follow me on Instagram and TikTok for the rest of my content. Other than that, thank you for listening, and I'll be back again soon with another episode.